Vayhi dvar Adonai elai lemor. Lo tikach lecha isha, v'lo yiyu lecha banim uvanot b'makom hazeh. God appears to Yirmiyahu, and he says to Yirmiyahu, don't take a wife. Don't get married. You will not have sons and daughters in this place, in Jerusalem, in Israel. That is what God predicts or commands Yirmiyahu. What is God saying to Yirmiyahu? God is saying, there is no future here. When Noach gets onto the Teva, gets onto the ark, it says that Noach and his 3 sons and his wife and his 3 daughter-in-laws. When he leaves the ark, it says Noach and his wife and his sons and their wives, that they get off the ark. And the rabbis understand that having children, I don't know if intimacy generally, but having children, or trying to have children, was prohibited on the ark. When it's a time of pestilence, a time of destruction, a time of disaster, you don't have kids. I know there's some stories about babies who were born in Auschwitz, but maybe one out of, 50,000 or whatever survived. The rest of the pregnant mothers or the babies when they were first born, whatever it might be, died. In time of destruction, children don't come into the world. And so God says to Yirmiyahu here, don't have any children. This place is a place of destruction. There is no future. Contrast that, we'll see later in the book where Yirmiyahu is going to tell the Jews who are already in Bavel, because we know already in 597, the king and many of the nobles were exiled 10 years, 11 years before the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Nebuchadnezzar sent out the people who he thought might rebel against him. He sent them to Babylon. He wanted them to assimilate. And then Yirmiyahu sends those people a message that says, buy land, have children, live your life. There's hope for the Jewish people in diaspora. In Jerusalem, destruction's happening. Right? If you have a child, that's an idea of faith. That's an idea that there's going to be a future. And God says to Yirmiyahu terribly in the beginning of this chapter 16, there is no future. Continuing in verse 3, because God says about the sons and the daughters that are born into this place, and the mothers who bear them, and the fathers who father them, yamutu lo yispadu v'lo yikaveru ledomen al pnei adama yu v'acherev urav yichlu v'aytan nivlatam lama'achal la'of hashamayim ulevehemat haaretz. All of these people will die gruesome deaths. They won't be lamented. They won't be buried. They'll die like dung on the surface of the ground that is consumed by the sword and by famine, and their corpses will be food for the birds of the sky and the beasts of the earth, similar to what was said in the last chapter. Kichol amar Adonai, al tavo beit marzeach, v'al telech lispod, v'al tanod lahem, v'asafti et shlomi me'eta mazen Adonai tachesed v'et haracham. Because God said, don't enter a house of mourning, don't go and lament, right? Don't console them, because I've withdrawn my favor from these people. My kindness has been withdrawn. My compassion. There's no rachamim. There's no chesed anymore for these people. Umetu gdolim uktanim ba'aretz hazot lo yikaveru, v'lo yispadu lahem, v'lo yitgodad, v'lo yikareach lahem. Right? The big and the small will both die. They won't be buried. No one will lament them. There's not going to be any signs of mourning. We know signs of mourning. We tear kriya. In the ancient period, it was prohibited amongst the Jewish people, but it was, at least according to the Rambam and others, it was idolatrous practice to scarify yourself, to gash, right? To do things of that. That's not going to be done. Don't break bread for the mourner, right? Don't send meals during Shiva to comfort the dead. Don't offer a cup of consolation for their loss of their father or mother. And don't enter also a house of joy, a house of feasting, to sit down with them to eat and drink. Right? Destruction's going to happen. There's going to be nothing. Continuing in verse 9, because God says, I'm going to banish from this place in your days the sound of joy and happiness, the sound of the bridegroom and the bride. We saw this a few chapters back. We talked about it. How in so many ways Yirmiyahu is the undoing of the second half of Yeshaya. The kol sason, the kol simcha, the joy and the happiness, the bride and the groom, the rebuilding, the future that Yeshaya talks about in the second half of his book. Yirmiyahu says that it is gone. It's not going to be here anymore. We're not going to have joyous times. And when you tell the people these things, and I'm sure they're going to be so glad to hear it, and they ask you, why has God decreed upon this evil? What have we done wrong? What sin have we committed? Because your ancestors, they deserted me, they left me, they followed other gods, they served them, they worshiped them. They did not keep my instruction, my Torah. V'yatem harei otem la'asot me'avotechem. And you want to say, oh, but that was our ancestors. It's not our fault. Well, you know what? You're even worse than them. You all do what you want. Phrase we've had numerous times in the beginning of the book of Yirmiyahu. We had it in last week's parsha back. Shrirut libi. Everybody's going according. They're doing what they want. I'll do what I want. They don't listen to God. And so I will throw you out of this land. It's a land that neither you nor your ancestors have known. And Bavel is a place that's far away. Bavel's beyond. It's not the neighboring territories. And what God is saying that is, it's not going to be easy to come back. Yeah, if you were in Israel and you were sent to Jordan, how difficult is it to get back to Israel? But if you're 500 miles away, that's going to be much more difficult. And in those places, you're going to serve other gods day and night, because I will show you no mercy. You won't believe me. You won't trust in me. You're going to serve all these other gods because you're going to say that our God is left. We're in verse 14. Pasuk Yadal Numa Adonai Below Yemerod Chai Adonai Sharalet Bnei Yisrael Meretz Mitzrayim Kim Chai Adonai Sharalet Bnei Yisrael Meretz Safon Mikol Artzot Asher Yidichim Shama V'Hashivotim Al Admatam Asher Natati LaAvotam. And here we seem to have two verses that seem to not make sense in this context. God says, I'm going to send you far away. It's going to be so far. You're going to be worshiping other gods. You're going to lose faith in me completely. And then in these two verses here, verses 14 and 15, God says, I'm going to take you out, and it's going to be so glorious that you will no longer talk about me as the God who took you out of Egypt, but rather the God who's brought Israel out of the northern lands and out of all the lands from the quote unquote four corners of the earth, because I will bring them back to their land, which I gave their ancestors. In the Gemara, there's a whole discussion during the Yemot HaMashiach, during the Messianic era. Do you have to say Shema or not? And these verses are cited. As to the debate, some says, okay, you won't have to say that, but we still said, no, you won't have to say that. The God will be the God. We won't talk about what's the big deal about the exodus from Egypt, Yetziat Mitzrayim, when God has brought us back from Bavel, from China, from Chile. That's going to be much greater. So it seems in the middle of a talk of destruction, there's no future. Don't talk to me. Don't pray for me, Yirmiyahu. I won't listen to Shmuel. I won't listen to Moshe. Nobody could change my mind. All of a sudden, stuck in the middle, there are two verses where God says, I will bring you back. Doesn't matter how far away you are. Hinini sholeach l'dayagim rabim numa Adonai v'digum v'acharechein eshlach l'rabim tzayadim v'tzadum me'al kol har me'al kol geva u'menikikei haslaim. I am sending many fishermen, and they will haul them out. And after that, I will send many hunters, and they will hunt them out of every mountain and every hill, out of the clefts of all the rock. For my eyes are on all their ways. They are not hidden from my presence. Their sin is not concealed from my sight. So, right, just as the fisher takes from its habitat, right? So too, we know that, that this will happen, that you'll be taken out of captivity eventually, but not so simply. V'shilamti rishona mishne avonam l'chatatam al chalalam et artzi b'nevlat shikutzehem v'toavatem maldu et nachalati, and I will pay them back in full. No, I'll even pay them doubly for their sins, because they've defiled my land with corpses and their abominations, and they filled my own possession with their horrific things. Right? Over and over again, once and again, right? This is going back to the beginning of the chapter. It's going to be double. Your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your avotechem, they left me, and now you have doubly left me. So it's going to be double sins. It's going to be more than just that. And here it seemingly Yirmiyahu does come and pray to God, perhaps. Adonai uzi umenusi biom tzara. Elecha goyim yavo me'afsei aretz. V'yomru ach sheker nachlo avotenu havel v'ein ba moil. Eternal One, my strength, my stronghold, my refuge, right? My oasis in the desert. Nations, right, come to you from the ends of the earth and say, our ancestors inherited us. Utter delusions, they gave us nothingness, things that are futile and worthless. Hayaselo Adam Elohim v'heim alo Elohim. Can mortals make gods for themselves? No. And therefore I will teach them once and for all, I will teach them my power and my might, and they shall learn that my name is God. And so here in the end of the chapter, it seems again like God is saying that I will take Bnei Yisrael back. That seems to be what God is saying here. Right? The heathens will come to worship me. Everybody's going to come in to listen to me. And I almost feel like a sense of whiplash here, back and forth from there's hopelessness, don't have children, nothing's going to happen. I don't care who comes to stand up for you, Bnei Yisrael. I'm not listening to, it doesn't even say Avram or Yitzchak here. I'm not going to listen to Moshe Rabbeinu, the one who managed to, hold me back at a time of great rage after the golden calf. I'm not going to listen to Shmuel. And think of Shmuel. Shmuel is the person who comes in the aftermath of the destruction of the temple of Shiloh, which happened. It was a terrible, terrible destruction. Aron was taken. The leadership was killed. Bnei Yisrael lost terribly in battle. Thousands and thousands died. So maybe Shmuel can come back and talk to me after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, same way he did the first time right after the destruction of the temple of Shiloh. No, God says, I'm not going to listen to any of them. Then all of a sudden, in both of these chapters, we have moments where God comes back and reverses and says, I will bring you back. You return to me, I will bring you back. The first chapter is, you return to me, I will bring you back. The second chapter is just God saying that it will happen. It will be so phenomenal. You won't even talk about the God who took Bnei Yisrael out of Egypt. And then more horrors, and then seemingly another messianic end. And so it's hard to sort of understand the whiplash, the going back and forth, the horrors that are being told here, and the greatness that is being foretold. And it shows in many ways, at least to me, sort of the life of Yirmiyahu, and to me, the pain and the difficulty in which he had to live. He's being told of destruction, he's being told of horrors, and they're real to him. And he's still holding on. He's hoping, because God has told them that return is going to happen. Might be in 70 years, might be in 100 years, might be in 500 years. And so he wants to believe. Hey, I want to hold on to these verses, to these moments where God says, I'm still with you and I will bring you back. But it's very hard to, in the face of the destruction, the horrific destruction that's described here in these chapters in 15 and 16. But the hope, and again, that's the idea, like we said in the previous chapter of Yirmiyahu, that is the hope that Yirmiyahu gives us for the future. No matter how horrific the exile destruction is, God is still going to be with us, and one day we shall return fully.